Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Greetings, everybody, and thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. Today's guest is Liz Grantham. Liz is the founder of The Optimal Me. It's a fitness app created specifically for those over 50, and it focuses on getting people functionally fit with exercises that take just 15 minutes a day. Liz and I dive deep into the importance of movement as we age, and not just moving, like me with running, but by doing exercises that actually help with everyday movement. Things that would help you, let's say, lift your grandchild or lifting luggage into the overhead bin of a flight. As Liz points out, 2.8 million people die each year from obesity. 2.8 million. But no one is talking about that. It's likely because it's not contagious, right? But it's for this very reason that she's motivated to help people keep their mobility and stay healthy well into late life. While it wasn't her intention to create an app that would keep us in shape during a pandemic, the timing of this is quite good, as we should all be staying active and functional and staying happy and fit so that when we get out of this, we're in the same or better shape than when this whole thing started. I think you'll really enjoy this conversation, not least of all because of Liz's very charming South African accent. Just a reminder to please take a moment to leave a review or a rating on iTunes or whatever podcast app it is you're using. And please share this episode with a couple of friends. All of those ways help the podcast get more exposure and help more people find it. With that, please enjoy this conversation with Liz Grantham. You know, Liz, whenever I think about you and your name and wanting to chat with you, I always think of Lady Grantham. I want to call you Lady Grantham. It's an unusual name for us here in the U.S., so it's really fun, you know, for me to hear the name. It seems really exotic, you know, and really wonderful. So I want to imagine you. I know that you're in South Africa, but I want to imagine you in a big castle somewhere.
My family, my ancestors come from England.
Oh, okay.
On my father's side of the family. So we do have a good laugh, and shame that it wasn't that costly.
I know. My surname, as you would say, my last name is Whitman. And there's a very famous candy here. It's not very high quality, but it's Whitman candies. And so, you know, people would say, "Oh, are you part of the Whitman family?" And I would think, I wish, you know, it'd be great. You know, not only the chocolate, but, you know, might have a little fortune here. So South Africa, I see you're bundled up there and here I am and I'm in a t-shirt and my shorts and it's beautiful here.
Yeah. So we're in winter. We're kind of heading into spring, just like you're heading into fall, but outdoors is always much warmer than it is indoors. So, in my home.
Okay. So you just don't keep the heat up in your home.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it always when it's very cold, I do. But I always think it's just we've got beautiful sunshine outside. I can sort of go and sit on my patio for 10 minutes and warm up and thaw quite quickly.
Right. So it's the nature of the way the house was built, and then you just don't keep the heat up. Yeah. I am more of along that thinking. I don't like to have the heat, and we don't have air conditioner. It's generally here in Seattle, it's not super hot, although I hate to say global warming, more people, it is getting warmer, more people have air conditioning, but I'm more like you. It's like I don't like to have the heat up. I'd rather just toss on a little extra layer, you know, rather than have that circulating in the house. So,
and one side of my home gets sun morning to night, and it gets very hot upstairs, and you know where we face north. But where I'm working now is on the kind of south side, where we're the opposite way around to the northern hemisphere. So it gets early morning sun, and then the sun shifts its way around. So by the afternoon, it's cool.
Yeah. Where in South Africa are you?
Johannesburg.
Oh, yeah. I've only flown through South Africa, I think, on my way to Zambia. But I was supposed to be down there earlier this year, which is just like such a heartbreaker. I was supposed to be in South Africa, in Cape Town, on my way to Namibia. So it's just a heartbreaker. We're all grounded here. which is just...
I know. And I heard over the weekend that we probably won't have open skies here until February. So we'll be able to travel internally, but no cross-border travel.
That, like, literally, I have like tears in my eyes. Oh, no. Why are they saying February?
Well, I think because the reality is that, COVID is everywhere still. It's not going away. I think any of us who think it's going away are quite foolish. There isn't going to be a vaccine until and I don't know why they're waiting that long. I think because a bit like in America, certain parts get it fiercely and then they get it under control and then people move and then the next area gets going. And then I suppose it will circulate around all over again. So I'm not too sure, the sadness of it is that from a tourism perspective, our summer, look, I mean, we still will have February, March, April, May is still beautiful here. But I think for people coming in, inward bound travel, which is what we really need quite badly. Look, I don't know how many people are excited about going anywhere and getting stuck. Yeah, no, me too.
I'm raising my hand here.
But the thing is, you only want to go to places where you can know that if you have to be put in a quarantine, you're okay.
Well, I'm curious about that. And this is a complete departure from what we plan to talk about, but I am curious just to talk this through that, I have some hope about travel because places are allowing testing upon arrival or testing before you get on a flight, but they don't even want to fool with that in South Africa.
Certainly not yet. And look, you can leave if you have to go and study or if you are a foreign national or there's a real reason for a job or whatever. So you can get on a plane that's going, but I think we'll be behind the curve in terms of that very quick testing. There definitely is. I've heard of people that have been tested from Germany prior to a flight to China. But the whole plane was clean before they got on. They got off wherever they got off in China, and one person on the plane was positive in the test. So in 7 hours, they'd gone from negative to positive.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories.
So I think you just have to take the chance. I mean, the airlines certainly are putting in all those special air filters and, doing what they can. I'm just not sure the demand and the cost, because I think the costs are going to be very expensive.
Yeah, fewer people flying, more expensive. Yeah, I think that's just the reality. But boy, we've saved so much money this year on flights.
Well, let me tell you, our currency today, I mean, I woke up this morning and I was, well, thank God we're not traveling, because with all of this going on and all of the economic turmoil, our currency is just losing value. You'll have a wonderful time when you're here. You'll be able to live a 5-star, 7-star experience quite comfortably. So I think it's also, I was like, oh, thank heavens we're not traveling. But on the other hand, if we were traveling, maybe we wouldn't be in the state we're in. So, well,
we're all interconnected. That's certainly the case. I mean, the bad part is the COVID part, but then we're interconnected, just like you're talking about the value of your dollar dropping, and there's so many things that affect that, and maybe the tourism dollars is just part of that. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that news and information. It's news, right? It's good to be informed, at least. It's good for me to have more information, even when it's not what I want to hear. So what's keeping you busy down there? Let's do this. If you could tell me a little bit about your app, The Optimal Me, just give, listeners background on the launch of it, when it launched, and what it's all about. And so I want to hear that little bit of a synopsis. And then let's go back. We'll talk about what led you to that. And then let's kind of finish with a deeper dive about it, because I want to learn really more of the details and why it's come to life. But for now, let's just hear a little bit of a synopsis from you.
So The Optimal Me is a digital platform that's been developed especially for midlifers to ensure that we're able to live freely, independently, healthily, and well as we age. It's been built to put our personal control of how we age in our hands. It really has been built because we know that in the life we lead today, physical inactivity is in fact as much of a pandemic as COVID. And what we've done is really gone back in time to thinking about our bodies, how our bodies were built to move, how we move today, and the things that are important to us as we age. So the Optimal Me is all about functional wellness with movement at its core. And the reason that we are quite different to everyone else and are an offering that might seem similar but is different is that our whole approach is about whole body movements. It's about us using our bodies the way that they were designed to move. And every workout and routine that's on our site is about improving our mobility, stability, flexibility, and strength. And as we age, those are key components of our ability to stay healthy and well and to age well. What we did was we were very surprised when I decided that this was this exciting concept and something that I really wanted to tell the world about was we've lost sight of how we should move, and we focus very much on isolated movement versus integrated movement. The other thing that we really think about a lot is our bodies change as we age, and there's no getting away from that. So what do we do to make sure that we're able to better perform all the tasks and challenges and adventures of daily life as we age without living with limitation and this ever-encroaching feeling of unable to do what we did before? And feeling well is about moving. And science is showing us that moving is at the core of how our bodies and our brains interact. It's about how we breathe. But added to that, nutrition is also a key issue for how we're going to age and what we're doing to our bodies. And a lot of people get such conflicting information about what's going on. You know, last year you shouldn't have butter. This year you must have margarine.
You have to put the butter in your coffee.
Exactly. You mustn't eat fat-free. You must only eat full cream. There's just so much confusing information out there. And what we are trying very consciously to do is to review all of the latest science and make sure that on our site, over and above this amazing movement program that we have, that you can find reliable, well-researched information so that you're able to make the best decision for yourself about what it is you need to do. And not for a minute are we trying to replace any medical advice, but I think one of our big objectives was we are so time poor. Imagine if there was someone that was curating for us information that was relevant. It would mean that we're not necessarily telling anyone what to do, but we're providing all of the latest information about the facts and the issues that are important to us. So that really is what the Optimal Me is all about. But as I was saying, at the core is our program of what we call integrated movement routines that are whole body movement routines to really help midlifers and people as we get older really age well and stay mobile and flexible.
And that launched in 2018, is that right?
Well, we started building in 2018, and our first sort of marketing activity was more than a year later. And earlier this year, we really started getting going because I, as a business person, was running another business, and I, it hasn't been our core. Sort of hasn't taken up all my time. But what we discovered along the way is that user experience in digital is a very interesting space to work in because you work with young people that are always about the next best thing. Those are the people that are developing. And our target audience is not interested in the next best thing. They want what's familiar and easy and that they know how to do. So we've had 2 iterations of our user experience. The first one that was cutting edge, out there, all new, etc., but nobody knew how to use it, and we're finding it really frustrating. So we actually reworked our UX and launched that earlier this year in March to just make it much simpler, to make it much easier for people to read, understand, find a homepage, move around.
That's a really interesting distinction. And even as you were talking about like kind of the difference between, younger people wanting the next best thing, and my internal response to that was like, I think about Twitter and I think about all I have to do is say the word Twitter and I get stressed out, because to me, it's just a fire hose of just stuff coming by, and it makes no sense to me. And it just like I said, just like the thought of it stresses me out. And it's probably that same way. It's like, younger people love it because it is a fire hose and there are things, there's constantly new things that are happening. But there's just that, just the way that we're wired and what we're used to, and the fact that we do like things that are a little bit more comfortable. That's why, we might be on Facebook. We're still, when everybody else is jumping off Facebook, that's what we're comfortable with.
Well, just think about if your bank changes their online flow, or they update the app and they think it's fantastic and marvelous. And now you've got to go and search for your passwords that you haven't used for however long, or where you used to click and you could be really fast and efficient and get things done. And now everything's upside down and it takes months to get used to it. And, you really don't like it. If you could easily move a bank, changing a user experience would be enough to make, I think, many people in our age group just go, we don't want this, and go somewhere else. We're forced to learn, but I think it is very frustrating and it makes us a bit anxious, because technology, whilst we're all embracing it right now, and I think that is a fantastic thing, is we're being kind of pushed into the space where we really have to get comfortable with it. Whereas before, I think we were like, well, we can cherry pick the bits we like. We all know how to email or to search online, but we don't have to have lots of apps or, do any of these things. We don't have to be engaged on Zoom, or we can make a phone call. That's really nice. And now we've had to go into that space, but it is anxiety inducing. There's no doubt about it. And I think often we deal, when we have a query or a problem, with young people that are such digital natives that they don't even understand why we have an issue or how we find it hard. I think often as a group, we feel a little bit invisibilized. I know that's not a real word, but
I understand it, yeah.
But people talk to us like we're idiots. Young people are like, but what do you mean? They don't even understand why we have a problem. And I think a lot of people are used to phoning a call center. And now suddenly in this world, we're not calling a call center. We're having to deal with a chatbot, or there's instructions online that we have to follow. We don't understand the language because it's completely different language. So what we've really tried to do with the Optimal Me is to work very hard to be very simple and very basic, and give people in our age group a level of comfort and ease, not only that they're going to feel in their bodies, but also in terms of the experience that they're going to have with us.
Was it a learning process for you as you went into this? Because presumably, I know your background isn't in technology and building apps. When you started this out, was like, did you just learn, like, slow down, young people, like you're talking way over my head, and we need to back it up a little bit? Or were you like pretty quick on the uptake with that?
Absolutely not. 3 years in, last week, I had another aha moment about why things weren't moving the way I was expecting them to move. I've been involved in technology at a distance as a marketer, so I've overseen the building of certain things, but never like this. And honestly, if I had known what I was getting into when I started out, I would probably just never have even done this. But for me, the train left the station and it was like there was no choice but to learn. And there's so many things to learn. We use the same words, but they have completely different meanings in marketing versus technology. So when somebody says we're designing X or Y, or, we're going to create a process, I think, oh, that's what that is. But I'm interpreting it against my world and my language versus theirs. So we've had a lot of that going on. And this has been a very expensive master's degree or 3. And I'm sure that I've still probably got a few more to come, but it certainly has made life interesting and forced me to also be up to date, learning new things, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's great for brain plasticity, right? It's better than a crossword puzzle, trying to just keeping the neurons firing, it's great. What is your background? Just like in terms of career?
I studied fashion design. I graduated as a fashion designer, and I worked for a very short while doing bridal wear, and when I say a very short while, it took me 6 months of spending my weekends with hysterical brides and mothers of the bride. And this is not for me, and resigned that job. And then through a friend, got a temporary job in an advertising agency. And I was a temporary personal assistant to the managing director. And we worked on a big event. And I fell in love with a project that they had running. Shell Oil was their big client. That was the start of my career in marketing. And I mean, I now am 30 plus years and have had my own agency. I think it's 22 years this year.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. So marketing is my world. But like with everything, digital has changed the face of what we were doing years ago. It's made, everything is different, how we approach things, how our clients market, how budgets are spent. So it's also a completely new, different world. Very much also, I think, a world where young and old collide a little bit. But yeah, so my background always has been marketing, and I've got Facebook is one of my clients, MasterCard. I have big global clients, and we work around the world for them.
So what exactly do you have a team with your agency? What exactly do you do now as part of the agency, as leading the agency, or did you do before the app?
So thankfully, part of my, I've always been, we're very, very good at experiential and developing market work. I kind of spend a lot of time on strategy. That's often, the role I play in terms of the team is I'm a guiding light as opposed to kind of very involved. I do interfere a lot because I have a very kind of deep attention to detail. So I drive them a little bit nuts, my team, I think. But I work very closely with our creative director, just based, I think, on the many, many years of experience. But yeah, so strategy and involvement with clients where necessary is really my space.
It strikes me, you're at least the third woman that I've spoken with on the podcast who has a successful business, whose background is in marketing. And I find that really interesting. I mean, it makes perfect sense because when I look at your website and your kind of introductory video on there, it's beautiful. And it really speaks to me. And I just think, oh my gosh, this is such a great, really well done piece. It explains everything really well. It makes me feel good. It makes sense. And you can tell that it comes, you can't tell that it comes from your marketing background, but it makes sense that it comes from your marketing background. And just when I think about, like I said, these other women who have these successful businesses, it's so much about, yes, of course you have to have a quality product, but you have to be able to speak the language and understand the language and kind of understand your audience in order to be successul. That's the bottom line.
Well, I think it goes back to an ability to communicate. And what we found in the world is that I think potentially if you're talking to women in our age group, we were trained in a very different way. We were made to work at the master's feet before we got to ever kind of start climbing the ladder. So we really learned to pay attention. We learned to not make mistakes because they were very expensive. To fix a mistake, if you worked in marketing 30 years ago, was an extraordinarily expensive cost. So we had to cross our T's, dot our I's, understand processes. And we were schooled in that over and over and over again. We were also schooled in problem solving in advance, in learning to see ahead what was coming at us, because we couldn't afford to make mistakes. And our bosses never let us off the hook. It was you really had to take the pain if you got things wrong. The client certainly wouldn't pay for mistakes, and they were just as strict. I think that there was a different level of mastery that was expected of all of us as we kind of climbed the ladder, whichever field we were working in. And I think digital, as much as it is this extraordinary, it's opened the world to us. It's given us opportunities to find solutions for the most incredible issues of our day and really big things. But what it's done is it's made everything fast and hard. I mean, we watch the news cycle.
And cheap.
And people do not craft any longer. And I'm sure, I'm going to now sound like my mother used to sound, and we were like, oh, those old people, can they not understand? But I think we had to learn to craft. And potentially that's why we're able to communicate in a way where we're able to connect. And I think that young people connect with their audiences fantastically because they understand their language. They understand how they speak, their lingo. Whereas we're not necessarily on that page, and we shouldn't be, because we then really look foolish, when we're trying to talk, young people talk. But I think our age group still looks for a level of craft, whether we're reading an article or a post or watching a television program. We want quality in the work. We want to see that real care has been taken. And okay, not everybody, because I mean, there's lots of amazing old people on TikTok, doing crazy videos. They really are. I mean, it is extraordinary. I don't have it. I wouldn't know. And I think good for them that they're, pioneers in a brave new world. But I do think that is part of the experience at this time in our life that we look for, is to talk to people who we feel connect with us, who understand where we come from, what our pain points are. And I think there are lots of human truths for us all in this time of our life. We are connected as midlifers with lots of common issues and problems, as millennials and, whoever the younger generations are.
Do you find it difficult? I'm sure you have a wonderful team there, but do you find it difficult to kind of get those younger people on board with you, to maybe slow down and kind of see your perspective, and they're trying to race ahead?
I think so. They're always... Look, in life, as you build a team, you always find people who are very detail conscious or, want to be in that space. I think some of them are just remarkably clever and talented. Spelling is not always the thing that they worry about first. Use spell check, please. So I think that, but they're excited, and I think there's nothing more wonderful than working with young people. I think that's been part of our wonderful learning process, is that the team on the Optimal Me is a mixture of older and younger, and very young. And the younger people are extraordinary at research. Let them loose online. I can't research like they do. I can't, my search is hopeless compared to what they're able to do. And they're very good at problem solving in those spaces. And I think the kind of connection of these wonderful young creative people who are not boxed in like I think a lot of people in our generation are, because our process still works, but sometimes we don't have the freedom and the flexibility and the understanding what's going on and what is very current and what they're able to do. So it is fantastic. And I think it also keeps one young to be able to work with young people. At least you're sort of still connected in some way to their work.
All of the work that you have been doing, like with your business and everything, that's all been in Johannesburg?
So my agency is based out of Johannesburg. I mean, we work around the world.
I didn't know if you had spent time elsewhere working or creating businesses or working for other agencies elsewhere. It's all been in Johannesburg.
All been out of Johannesburg, but the Optimal Me has been built out of Mauritius, which I'm not sure if you've ever been there, but it's the most beautiful island in the Indian Ocean. That's where all our development, a lot of the work is not done in South Africa. It's actually a really global team, which is exciting. I mean, I think that's the really exciting thing about our world today, is the Optimal Me is not run by the Johannesburg team at all. It's actually a global team that is built. The development is all done in Europe. And
well, that brings a whole nother level of confusion, maybe, or just it's, I mean, you talk about the culture between older and younger people, but then you talk about literal cultures, completely different cultures. Have you found that? Have you identified that? Like, okay, this is how they work and respond to things in this country, and this is how they work and respond to my emails in this country.
Always, but thankfully my agency background has always, we've always had global clients. So, I can be talking in the morning to Australia and then connecting with the US counterparts in the afternoon as they come online. As I say, I have done a lot of work in developing markets. So I have a real, deep knowledge of working in Africa and some markets in South America and Southeast Asia. And I think that that's what's quite joyful is that, you get to learn the ways of other people, and being open-minded, I think, is a great blessing. Having to learn to be, even when you aren't at first, by the time you've done it for a few years, you really are in a space where you're able to understand where people are coming from, a different way that they respond culturally or present things. And I think that, the melting pot of dealing with our world is a beautiful thing. You travel, so you experience that. And I think it is one of the great privileges that I've had in my career is to be able to deal with people all around the world.
Yeah, one of the things that I find is that I have to ask myself, this person that I'm working with in another country, is this just a cultural thing, or is this person qualified for their job? And sometimes they're not qualified, and sometimes it's just on me. Sometimes it's just we have to kind of settle into a relationship and kind of understand, like you said, it's the language. And sometimes, oftentimes English is a second language. And so things aren't translating quite the way, like I'm not understanding things quite the way that they're saying them. But I think it is sometimes a fair question to ask is like, well, is this person just maybe a little inept at their job? Or is this just a settling in period and we kind of have to sort this out? So how did you find your team around the world?
Serendipity, I think. When I had the idea, so as an agency, we've always worked globally, as I was saying. We work and we've worked with big companies, and our work is very varied in terms of the kind of work that we do. So we do a lot of production work. We've always done that work. So I have quite a good network. And when I had this idea and I was sitting in this hotel room in Barcelona going, this is what I need to do. I need this problem solved. I know that there are hundreds of thousands of people just like me in this situation right now that would also want a solution. I really thought about the fact that this was going to be a global product. And it needed a global team to make sure that we were very open-minded in how we approached things, and also understood tonality, because how Americans are and how you speak and how you are approached and what you're used to in advertising and in comms is very different to how people in Europe want to be spoken to. The user experience, privacy laws, all kinds of things are much stricter in Europe. It's much less aggressive in its tone. And I think that has been, it was a challenge, but it also was something I knew would bring me great joy, was to be able to build a global team of the best people that I could find wherever they were to participate in creating this product.
Listening to you talk about that and kind of your background, that you had already been working kind of with a global team of people, it makes sense. Like I'm thinking, well, gosh, if I wanted to buy an app, like I'm putting myself in your place, if I wanted to create an app, where would I even start looking for a team? Like, do you go to the Mauritius Craigslist, and start searching, you start advertising for it? But I see that you had these connections and you tapped into those. And I think kind of the lesson there for people is that, look, we may not have, I certainly don't have the kinds of connections that you do in that space. I have different connections. So what can I do? How can I tap into the information, the experience, and the contacts that I have, and bring those people into whatever it is that I want to do? But I think that's an important factor, is that you had this background, you had these connections, these tentacles that were kind of already spread out, and you were just able to tap right into that.
Yeah, look, it wasn't always simple. There've been some real mistakes made along the way, where I've thought, or it's been presented to me in a way that these are the people that we really need to work with on this section of work. And it really has been a real mismatch in terms of expectations, deliverables, understanding, all of those things. So it's not without its challenges. But I think that, like with everything, I'm sure even for you, when you were starting to work on your travel business,
My tours, yeah.
you meet people that are fantastic, and then you meet people who you think are going to be fantastic, and then they're not so fantastic. It's the same with employing people anywhere. I think for anybody that is going to be building a team or employing people, or just building a network of people that are going to support your endeavors, there are always going to be those, that just fit in and they're fantastic. And it's, you just can't believe how lucky you are. And then there are those who disappoint. I mean, I think that you just have to hope that the scorecard checks out higher on those that are great than on the disappointment side. And that you've got your eyes open, and that those that are going to disappoint, you don't carry them for too long. And the damage isn't too great, or the loss of time, or whatever it is, before you figure that out.
Right. Loss. Time and finances with that. Yeah. So let's talk about travel. You mentioned Barcelona, and you've got all these connections around the world. Did your work actually lead you to travel? Were you traveling for business, or has your travel really just been for pleasure?
So both. I think I work to travel, without a doubt. And thankfully, my work has always had a travel component to it, whether it's I'm traveling because I've got to do projects in different parts of the world, or I'm traveling for pleasure, or to go and meet clients wherever they are. I've always been able to make sure that my work allowed me to travel. And obviously, for me, travel is the great sort of creative spur in my life. I mean, I find it, life is so exciting when I know that I'm going to be going somewhere, whether it's for business or pleasure. And I think that what I did find, I traveled a lot for business, is that it was exhausting traveling for business. So I would travel, and, often for business, you're going as in and out as fast as you can. You're taking flights at dreadful times of the middle of the night or whatever, to squash as much as possible into your day.
Right, to arrive for an 8 a.m. meeting kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or, you're traveling I did a lot of international travel, or, in Africa. So the times were often very strange, and you've got to keep going. And I really found that between kind of working with clients around the world, the travel that I was battling physically, to kind of keep myself feeling good. And it, I think travel, if you're not well prepared, can take a real toll on your body and your energy levels if you're not able to really approach it with an understanding of what's going to happen. And, when you're young, you can do anything. You can keep going for days and nights without there being a problem. But I found as I was getting older, it was harder and harder to sort of not add an extra day to be able to recover prior to meetings. That time zone travel had a much bigger impact on me than it had ever had before. Stiffness in my body, all of those things. I had to really start thinking about how I was going to not end up not wanting to travel, being, do I have to go? Do I have to do it? And I think that, that was part of the birth of the Optimal Me, was this sort of issue around how bad I started feeling and how less able I was to enjoy myself when I was, traveling around the world.
Right. So it's a way for you to recover and just to feel better in your travels. So kind of have a routine, have a physical exercise routine in your pocket, basically.
And also to be able to maintain kind of fitness and flexibility, strength. You've got to put those bags up into the luggage rack. I saw that I wasn't as fit and flexible and strong, etc. I didn't have the same level of energy. I certainly did mentally, but physically I wasn't able to keep up. So for me, the movement program that I found, because I really was quite unwell, I found this Yanni, our wonderful trainer that's on our app, because I was very stressed, not exercising and, just living kind of in a space where there were just never ending deadlines. And between the deadlines and jumping on airplanes, it really physically was having a very bad impact how I felt on my health. So having found a solution, which I was lucky enough with good research to find, to then travel and have that feeling of, oh my word, I'm so stiff. My neck is so sore. I've got such a headache. I just need to move, but I'm now in my hotel room and I don't really want to go and run on a treadmill because that's not what I do. Actually, that's not really going to help my neck. That was where I had that moment sitting in that hotel room in Barcelona going, oh, if I could just have this in my pocket. That really has been a real guiding light for us in terms of all the development that we've done. Is what we want to do is something that, can go with you wherever you go, and that it's not difficult.
And now we can't go anywhere. So, so we can have it in our pocket, in our, in our bedroom or in our office, exactly. In our home office.
Whether you want to, on your laptop, your television screen or your mobile, it can work anywhere. We certainly didn't anticipate that we wouldn't be going anywhere.
Well, how did you get the travel bug?
So we grew up during apartheid in South Africa, and we were not welcome, generally speaking, around the world. South Africans were very frowned upon because our government was quite appalling and, apartheid was despicable. And there were sanctions and, it was a horrible time. So my friends that I had when I was young and at school would travel within South Africa. And one of my very best friend when we were in high school got to go to Europe with her aunt. And they went on the Orient Express. Can you imagine being 16 and going on the Orient Express? And she came back from this trip with bracelets from Toledo and all kinds of exotic things that she had seen and, her photographs. And I was beyond envious. All I wanted was to experience that. And it was sort of way out of sight at that point in my life.
Your parents didn't foster this love of travel. You didn't have that in your immediate world.
No. So, I'd lost my father when I was very young. So my mom was a single mother with 5 children. So we traveled locally, certainly not on holidays. We didn't have holidays. I had holidays, but we didn't travel for holidays because she worked. But when I started working, I then got to travel extensively within South Africa, which is a remarkable country. It's very much like traveling through America. What you see on the East Coast to the West Coast and in between, it's just breathtaking and beautiful. So South Africa is very similar. We have rivers and mountains and flat plains and bushveld and ocean. So I started in my job traveling extensively around the country and, places I'd never seen or been. And then thankfully, as I started working and was earning, I got to see a little bit more. And then I, in fact, hadn't been on a holiday. I'm also a single mom. My daughter eventually got to an age where I thought, outside of business, I thought, actually, I can leave her for 10 days and go on a holiday. And a girlfriend and I decided we were going to go to Morocco.
How old was your daughter at the time?
She was about 10. And we planned this trip to Morocco. And it was like becoming a grown-up again, just in my own right, outside of business travel and kind of being at home with visiting my family, etc. And I laughed for 10 days. I didn't stop. The experiences we had in this crazy exotic location are still today. We can talk and laugh and cry at how naive we were and all of the silly things that happened and how beautiful it was. We came home with a container load of goods. We completely lost our minds. And from that minute on, I just realized that actually giving the gift of seeing the world to my daughter, but also as a gift to myself, it was this real reward. And it always has been, something that, and it doesn't matter where, put me in a beautiful city or put me in the wild, or, it's good for me. I'm happy to go and experience and see and do.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I know that when you were describing the feeling of just planning for something, just that excitement of having something to look forward to and doing the research on a new destination. This is just killing me, this time.
Think about when you first were planning your first exotic trip, there was probably no internet. We used to go and buy the travel books from the bookstore to see where to book a hotel and what was recommended. You really didn't have much of a clue of what you were going to land in when you got there, if people hadn't been before. So it was really, the research was quite different then to what we're able to do now. Now there's still surprises along the way. People might put a sneaky photograph of an apartment or something that's not quite what you get when you get there. But we certainly didn't have the ability to do what we do now. You just had to pack your bag and be ready for an adventure if you were traveling.
But is that a good thing?
I don't know. I think sometimes there are places that one wouldn't necessarily go to if you knew all the down and dirty and, we're checking stuff. So, I love that now we can plan and see and do and look and really see the world online. So you can really plot and get quite specific. But the level of adventure then, with just not knowing what you might end up seeing, doing.
See, I loved that. That. Of course, there was a little bit of stress involved in it because, like you said, you arrive, you had no way to contact a hotel in advance, and you don't know if they're going to be sold out, or if the taxi driver is going to bring you to his brother's place, instead, his brother's hotel or his uncle's hotel instead. There was that level of excitement of the not knowing about it. Yeah, I have a shelf full of, as someone said, like, what are all those blue books on your shelf? They had seen a picture or something, and it's all my Lonely Planet books. It's like all of my guidebooks. And I still buy guidebooks. I don't like to do, I'll do some research online. And, if I'm just first checking out a destination, I might go to Instagram and kind of scroll through, particular hashtags. But I still love a good guidebook. I love to crack it open and highlight it. And
a map.
Oh, yeah, on a map. Mm-hmm.
We really do give away our age that we love a guidebook and a map.
So how are you dealing right now with kind of being grounded? Are you so focused on the app right now and the Optimal Me program, the entire thing, that it's okay that you're not traveling? Are you just kind of focusing your energy on that? Or are you really feeling it in a very visceral way?
I think that it's, what I have learned is that this is a long journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I most definitely have times when I'm so focused on what I'm doing, and I really have enjoyed the ability to really dig deep into things that sometimes I might skim the surface. What I do miss is the motivation of something ahead, of a little bit of excitement or a treat, even if it's in 3 months' time or 4 months' time, to know that we're working towards something that's going to be expansive, something that's going to really inspire me from a creative perspective. I also miss the ability to have real face time, not digital face time with people, because I think the amount of time that one saves in this digital world is fantastic. We're not driving to meetings, doing any of that stuff. But with some of the big important issues we've got to be dealing with and big decisions that need to be made, I think it's very difficult to really get a read on people sometimes in this situation. You miss out on seeing body language. You miss out on some of those verbal or physical cues that we would normally have if we were in a meeting. And there are big, thorny issues often to be discussed that are difficult to discuss when you're not in a room and know that you actually have to be there and you have to come out the other side with a solution that serves everybody. I think that for me, outside of just the joy of packing, I don't like packing, but once the bags are packed and I'm on the way to the airport, that joy of knowing that on the other side there's something thrilling and exciting, and getting that real upliftment of being in a new space, or not necessarily knowing where you are, seeing a new museum, etc. I think there are days when I dream, I play games. So where's the first place we're going to be? Or I go and I look through my, thankfully now, digital photographs, and remember. It's become a very interesting thing. I spend a lot of time remembering.
Yeah, I found that too, that, I travel so much that I might be home for 3 weeks or a month, and then I'm off to the next trip. So it's enough time to do laundry, to repack, to get ready for the next trip. And I find now that I'm just like, I'm grasping on those kind of final trips that I took, the most recent trips. I drink coffee out of my Marrakesh cup, every morning.
Is Marrakesh not I lost my mind in Marrakesh. It was like being a child being let loose in a sweet store for me.
Yeah, I think Morocco in general did that for me. Like every part of Morocco, it was like it was a new gift to be opened, like every destination, whether it was the Sahara or Marrakesh or Fez, Chefchaouen.
Did you go to Essaouira?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, oh my gosh. Yeah. So everything there is just is a magical gift for sure. And I have these tours set up for Morocco, and just by luck, I had a small group that I brought earlier this year because I had so many. I do for Morocco, they're women only tours, and I had so many women interested in going that I just kind of tacked on this last minute trip just to handle some of the overflow. So there was a small group of us that went in February, and I'm so grateful that we went, that we were able to go, because everything shut down right after that. But yeah, but Morocco's pretty special. So I've got all these trips planned to Morocco with these groups, and they keep kind of getting bumped out, So we'll see how things happen with that.
Hopefully all of, I think the one thing that I also think about is that one needs to make sure that you're ready when the time comes. We must be ready. We can't have dissolve because we're now spending so much time sitting on our sofas, closed up at home, losing all of our muscle mass, sometimes our minds, etc., that we stay ready. I think that is to make sure that we keep our hope and kind of happiness buckets topped up. I think that is something that all of us that have, that want to be traveling and want to be moving around need to do, is to be looking after ourselves physically at this time. I think that really needs to be something we're very mindful of and actually plan. And traveling and the thought of going somewhere can be a real motivation to do that, I think, because when you don't know what's coming next or when it's going to be, staying motivated is very, very, very difficult for any of us. So hopefully people can take that thought of being ready to go on an adventure to take care of themselves during this time, so that they can walk the 200 steps to see the view, or be lugging their bags that are full of wonderful spices or things that they see and find into the airplane luggage racks, etc. Because we don't realize how quickly we lose all of that ability, especially at our age. I think that it's something that until you don't realize that you're losing the ability to do the things you did before. So hopefully this wonderful world of travel is something that can motivate people to really keep moving and keep doing exercise that is going to keep them fit for purpose.
Well, you actually bring up a really good point about how important it is to stay ready, as you said, and stay motivated so that when the time does happen, that we will not have melted or deteriorated, that we'll be healthy enough to then go out and travel. I was talking to a friend of mine last night who is having a bit of a struggle, through this whole thing. She's a single mom of 2 kids, and she's working, and, it's hard for her. And, I said to her, the thing you have to remember, though, is that this will be over. It's like not never, like it probably won't be 2 years. So we can look forward to that. But when will it be? We're not really sure. But let's go into it thinking this isn't forever. So with that in mind, like you said, what can we do to keep ourselves prepared so that when things open up, when South Africa opens up and the skies open up and we can travel again, then we'll be ready to we'll be physically ready to bring our own bags and to get on the plane and to be able to hike around and take a safari and, do all the things, go to the wineries and do all the things that you want to do in South Africa. Just one quick question. Are you able to travel within the country yourself?
So currently we're allowed to travel within our provinces and it's just recent, literally in the last week or so, that we're able to travel for tourism within our provincial boundaries. So like within our states, as an example. We may travel for business if we have the right permit. We have to actually get permission and permits from our local police stations if we want to travel for business outside of our provincial areas. But I do believe that in the not too distant future, they will relax that we are able to travel within our national borders.
So you really do have a pretty strict lockdown there.
Very much.
Yeah. I know here in the United States, there are some states that require you to quarantine. So if you're coming from, let's say, California and you're going to New York, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks because there's some states that are hot spots. But, I don't know. I think I've heard of some people like in Hawaii being fined because in Hawaii you also have to quarantine. I've heard of people being fined at least. So they're doing some kind of policing of it, but it's really hard when you've got so many people, in this country and you've got, just people driving around and you can identify people from license plates, but that's not always the case. So you can move around a little bit there. So let's talk about the app and the importance of it. It's kind of a nice transition from travel and wanting to be ready for travel. But really, we want to be ready for everyday life, whether it's just walking up our own steps, to our house or lifting the grandkids, that sort of thing. And we start to lose that ability, especially if we're not paying attention to it. And really, your app addresses that. And really I think what you folks, and I don't know if this is a common term, but I know you folks kind of coin it as an integrated functional movement or as integrated functional movements. Here in the U.S., I think that if you did a poll, I think maybe 5% of people would know what functional medicine is or functional movement. So can you describe that?
I think definitely. And you're spot on. We fielded some research in the US last year to understand, how people felt about it. And we actually had to include a definition of functional, so to speak. And I think that it's, in this time, we're looking for answers. And I think people are becoming aware that we take too many pharmaceuticals to treat problems. And prevention, to be frank, is what we have to look at. But prevention is really boring and nobody's interested in prevention until they're in a crisis. But what functional does is, let's just talk about movement for a moment, is that if you think about kind of our forefathers, caveman, etc., they moved to live. So movement was how they survived. If they couldn't move, they were going to get eaten by a wild animal or somebody else was going to bang them over the head and take their wives, whatever it was. So they had to be really functional in the way they moved to survive. And whilst our built environments have completely changed, if we think about how we live now, we barely move. So, through the centuries, we move less and less and less. And the way we live now is we hardly move at all. Our environments are designed and built for convenience and efficiency. So we don't have to walk to go and do anything. We don't necessarily farm and grow our own produce. We don't have to kind of clean big houses and, do our own housework all the time necessarily, or we're not exercising in a way that we used to. We're not maybe going to play tennis or doing those things. We're now having to book time to exercise. And whilst everything around us has changed, the design of our bodies remains the same. We are designed to move. The human body is designed to move. And if we don't move, we're not sending signals to our brain. Our body's physiology isn't working as it should. And because we're not moving, we become less and less functional. So 20 or 30 or however many years ago now, in the 70s actually, so that's 50 years ago, good Lord, there was this realization that, people don't move as much as they used to. So we're going to create gyms and places where people can exercise. And suddenly movement turned into exercise, and that turned into beautification. So most people then did exercise to look good, to have beautiful pecs, abs, whatever it was, as opposed to moving to be able to do what you need to do in the day easily with comfort, etc. So women started wearing very high heels, shortening their Achilles, etc. What none of us realize is that we actually start losing our balance in our mid-20s.
I didn't realize that.
No, we start losing our ability to balance in our mid-20s, and our flexibility for men and women peaks also at around 25 for men and between 25 and 30 for women. So if you think about the fact that our balance and our flexibility starts reducing, and we're now doing weights, we're not necessarily exercising to keep our balance and our mobility and our flexibility in space. Because we're losing flexibility, we're losing range of motion in our joints. So you can't play tennis or ski or do all of those exercises that you did easily, or, the sports you did for fun when you were young. And that is what functional really addresses. It's about how do we keep functioning in an optimal way? What are the things we need to do? And it's the same whether you're talking about functional medicine, where what a functional medicine practitioner will look at is what does your body no longer produce that it should produce for you to be in optimal health? Do you produce less digestive enzymes as you get older so you don't digest your food as easily? Do you lose, do your levels of serotonin reduce so that you no longer sleep as well? All of these things that happen to us as we age, that are enzymes and chemicals and things that occur naturally in our bodies that we don't produce as much of. So a functional medicine practitioner will have a look at that and go, right, here are the things that you would normally as a young person have been producing, and this needs a top up or that needs a top up. And that's why there's this whole field of geriatric medicine that's opening up. Because, Beth, the terrifying thing is that people in their 50s are going to, and 40s, in fact, Gen Xers, they say, will live longer than boomers, but have far worse health. So can you imagine me? I'm now going to live until I'm 95, but I'm going to be in ill health for this massive space of time. So if we don't start understanding that we must take care of ourselves so that we can function. And that is what functional is all about, that we can do the things that we need to do in our daily life. So we talk about with movement being fit for purpose. You might be fit, but are you fit for purpose? Now, you're a runner. You run these extraordinary ultramarathons, which is remarkable and amazing. Does running on its own make you fit for purpose in terms of aging? Maybe not. Because to be fit for purpose, you shouldn't only be able to exercise in verticality and have great cardio fitness and stamina. You also need to be able to rotate and twist and turn. And running doesn't necessarily teach you that. And you might be the best runner in the world, but you might just turn to pick up your groceries. And because your ankles only work in that way, and they're not being strengthened to work inwards and outwards, they're only going back and forth, you could quickly and easily lose your balance, even though you're the fittest person on the planet. And that is what the optimal me is all about, in essence, is integrated functional movement. So it's not just about doing a squat or a lunge or reaching or lifting or twisting. It's about going from side to side, up and down, left and right, in movement patterns that keeps your body fit for purpose so that you're able to twist, turn, lift, swing, and you're keeping the best sort of mobility in all of your joints. You're keeping your body aligned, because if your body's not aligned and balanced, it's like what you do for the left, you must always do for the right. What you do for the front, the back, the upper, the lower, you need to be doing all of that, not just individual things. And I think it sounds so logical when you talk about it. Yeah, of course, if I do this on my left, I should do it on my right. If I only do the things I like, I'm creating imbalances, my posture's not going to be great. And all of those things mean that you're not going to be comfortable. You're not going to be doing the things you want to do. Life's not going to be such an adventure. And I think there's so much, the most functionally fit people, research has shown, are hotel cleaners. The women who clean hotel rooms are actually the most functionally fit people, because they move all day, up, down, across, around. They're making beds, they're cleaning windows, they're dusting, their movement differs all day. And they're the ones that actually have the most fit for purpose bodies in terms of their ability to get through stuff.
That's interesting. There's a study, and I'm sure it's easy to look up, but there's a study where they told hotel cleaners, they told some of them that what they were doing is that they were just cleaning rooms, and then they told the other ones to approach it as exercise. And those that had approached it as exercise had actually lost weight while doing it, while the other ones had not. And it's this whole philosophy of the way you approach it in your mind that can really have the effect on your body. And so that's what that reminds me of, is that, that specifically the hotel cleaners, the workers there had this, approached it as exercise, and and that's exactly what you're saying there, is that, kind of what they're doing is exercising all day long.
And exercising in the right way, which is the wonderful thing, is, they're doing all the different movements in an integrated way. What we've really tried to be conscious of is that whilst I know that this work, it fixed me, it changed my life. And I've seen the impact of years of doing integrated movement on not only Yanni, who you'll see on our website, who is 60. He does 30 minutes of exercise every day. Every day he does 30 minutes of integrated movement. Obviously, he walks a lot and does other things on top of that. But he's never suffered from injuries. I mean, he was a dancer and a gymnast and all of those things. So he intuitively kind of understood taking care of his body. I think he was really in tune with it. But I also met, when I started this journey, people in their 80s who were remarkable. And they had been doing his classes for some of them 30 years. And they would say, Liz, if you compare me to the other people in my retirement village, I'm younger than people that are 10 or 12 years younger than me. What I'm able to do, my physical capabilities, and in fact, how I am mentally. I might be 83, but they're 68. And honestly, people think I'm younger than them. So I think maybe, COVID puts a slightly different slant on things. But as human beings, we are all really time poor. And it's very difficult if you're working or if you're managing kids and parents, etc., to find time to exercise or to do those things. I think often for most people, it's the thing that gets tossed out of the diary when our requirements ramp up, etc. So what we really tried to do when we were building the app is to say, okay, we don't want people spending all of their retirement money on medical ailments and illnesses, which is really what is happening to so many people, especially in America, where healthcare is such a massive issue. And 1 in 4 people over 55 go to the emergency room every year because of a fall. That fall either might just be something as simple as a sprain, it might be a fracture, it might be something really severe and actually even cause death. So we kick the can down the road a lot. Until you're really sick with something, you don't necessarily go to the doctor. Or, we don't pay attention to our bodies. They're telling us all the time when things are off. Oh, my hip's sore when I get out of bed in the morning. Jeepers, that must just be old age. Oh, I'm always bloated. I eat too much, or I must go on a diet. We never listen to the signal. We're so out of touch with the signals that we get. And I think just to go back to that whole functional aspect, when we're in tune with what's going on and paying attention, we do ourselves such a favor in terms of all kinds of things. Because, the World Health Organization calls inactivity a pandemic. I think I might have said that earlier.
Yeah, I didn't realize that came from the WHO. I hadn't heard that. I absolutely believe it.
More than 2 million people are dying every year from obesity. 2.8 million people, I think, from obesity and 2 million from inactivity. So you always think that's not going to be me. And it might not be. But until you twist your ankle and then have to be in a moon boot for 6 weeks and can't move around or do the thing, then you've got real stress. We can't keep kicking the can down the road and not thinking about prevention, because you know what? Prevention can be fun. And that's how I come back to this whole issue of how do you motivate yourself? So we've made our little offering around 15 minutes. We can all find 15 minutes. It's not too much. You can find 15 minutes in the morning, the middle of the day, to just move in an integrated, functional way. What I love about our workouts is some of them, I don't even get changed into exercise clothes. I'm in my jeans and my sweatshirt or whatever it is, and I just roll out my mat and I do them for 15 minutes. I'm not sweaty. I can carry on working afterwards. There's some like that. There are others, because of course cardio is important, where, it is a far more active workout, and, you can do 30 minutes if you want to. And we don't say stop doing the sports you love. Please keep running. It's fantastic. Go and do your yoga. Go and do tennis or swimming or hiking or biking or whatever it is you love. But what this also does is it actually keeps working on your brain-body connection. And what we've used is ever-changing movement patterns, which some people find frustrating, and it's actually the point. They want to know, okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that, and not good for your brain.
Yeah, it's not good for your muscles. Yeah, you have to train your muscles, train your body to do different things.
Yeah, and to be responsive. And the reason for that is if you're about to lose your balance or whatever, your mind knows how to help you get back on track if you're practicing like that. I think that if we can find the motivation, 15 minutes a day is not much. You don't have to drive to a gym now. You can do it at home. We've all got a little bit of extra time, I think, because we're not, moving around such a lot. But travel is the most wonderful motivation. And I think we all have to some way find the thing that is going to kind of get us over the finishing line. And you know what it's like when you run. So your body starts producing dopamine. You get on that runner's high. Moving produces all of our body's feel-good chemicals. If somebody gets into the habit of doing things every day, you get used to that hit of dopamine, you got a bit of serotonin going, etc. You just feel much better. If you don't do it, you start missing it. But you've got to get through that kind of habit-forming time. And maybe the carrot of Marrakesh is a good carrot.
That's actually a really great way to put it. I think especially now when there's so much unknown and we don't know, like all of my races have been put off and they keep getting put off. And so I think, there is a part of me that thinks like, well, I don't have to train as hard right now because I don't know when I'm actually going to be able to put it to use. So well, today I'll read a little bit more than I normally do, or I'll pick up my guitar and I'll play, just spend a little bit more time doing that. I don't need to go out for a run. But if we can tell ourselves, and if we can get into that habit, actually a friend of mine just gave me a book called Atomic Habits. And it's all about, well, this is his description. It's about kind of stacking your habits so that when you tell yourself, as an example, when I get up in the morning and I brush my teeth, I stretch. So at the same time, I'm doing kind of lunges and stretches. So that's like my stack. It's a reminder to me it goes from one thing to the next. So if you can do the optimal me and kind of bring that into your routine, because if some of these are 15 minutes, then really you get up in the morning and that could be the first thing that you do before you go get your coffee, and you can just kind of add that, between the teeth brushing and the coffee.
Exactly, and I think that we've built a 21-day program that actually really encourages habit stacking, because I think all the experts are saying now if you can include it in the things that you automatically do, and that that becomes your trigger so you don't forget. But we, as one gets familiar with some of it, they're 5-minute ones. So while you're making your coffee and you're waiting for the coffee to brew, you can do 5 minutes, which gives you a start. Because the other interesting research that's come out recently about movement is that one and done, like your big morning shift, is actually not mitigating the impact of sitting. So if we think about the COVID world, in fact, our normal world where we're working, Mayo Clinic, I think, says anything more than 4 hours of sitting a day is a problem. 4 hours. I sit more than 4 hours a day. Research that was recently done in the UK shows that people who do an hour are worse off than people who actually do 15 minutes 4 times during the day.
Oh, interesting.
That break up their sitting habit. So even though you're not necessarily getting to that, you've finished after an hour, you're doing less more often, is actually having a better impact on your body and your brain than I go in the morning and I do my big swim, but then I sit for 11 hours or for 8 hours. Well, that morning thing is not having an impact anymore. So that's what I love about the Optimal Me, is that actually go and have your morning swim because you love doing that, and that sets you up for the day. But maybe at lunchtime, or maybe when you get home from work, or before you go to bed, you just find 15 minutes to move in a different way, listen to some nice music, figure a pattern, and you're then mitigating against that sitting. The sitting issue is just, we don't actually even begin to understand how incredibly appalling sitting is. I mean, they always talk about the sitting is the new smoking. A lot of people don't smoke anymore. It's not socially acceptable to smoke. People have given up their cigarettes. But inactivity, sedentary lifestyles they double the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and obesity. And a sedentary lifestyle isn't the fact that a sedentary lifestyle is sitting more than 4 hours a day.
And we're doing much more than that. But, it might be interesting to see, maybe someone's doing a study on this with so many people working from home now and not going into an office, and a lot of people home with children. I wonder if they are just up and being more active than they normally would be. They're, because they're not at their cubicle, for the 8 or 11 hours a day. It would be interesting to know that. But yeah, your point taken for sure. I think it's the motivation. It's breaking it down into small increments, making it like really kind of accessible, for that reason, having it on the app and just in small bites, just makes it really easy to kind of jump on board.
One of our users, we had a chat with her because we like to connect every now and again, with people that are using it and are having fun. And she's a nurse from Pennsylvania. And she was saying she started it and, she hasn't done much for a long time. I mean, obviously she's a nurse. She's on her feet a lot. So she's not sitting too much, but she has a bit of fibromyalgia and other issues that she suffers from. And her husband owns a motorbike, and they loved, they go looking at the countryside and, go on rides around. And she said kind of 2 weeks in, they were going to go. And she swung her leg over the motorbike. And she said to him, "Oh my word, I actually just felt no pain." And I think it's, that's the difference. That's what it's about. She doesn't, look, she says she feels better, she's standing taller, etc. But normally for her to get on the back of her husband's motorbike is a painful thing. She's got to psych herself up. She knows when she has to move her leg over, it's going to be sore and it's going to hurt. She doesn't have that.
That's amazing.
Because she's moving in a way that her joints are getting a little bit more flexible. There's better range of motion. She's more balanced. She's not so scared of falling over because she's feeling more centered and stronger. And that really, I think, is what that illustrates functional perfectly.
That's a great example of how it just kind of sneaks up on you too. And you just realize, hey, I don't hurt that way anymore. I used to hurt that way. Hey, Liz, as we just wrap up here, is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask that you'd like to talk about, or you think that I should have asked you, either about you or the app or South Africa?
I think that we've spoken about the ill effects of sitting, which I think is a massive kind of part of what the problem is.
I'm glad you brought that up. And it could be, I have a what's called an Aura ring, and it tracks my sleep and a number of other things. But it also reminds me, like, time to stretch your legs. So I don't know how often it goes off. Usually it's when I'm recording a podcast. My phone's turned off now, but it'll go off if I'm sitting, for an hour or more. It'll say time to stretch your legs.
And I think a lot of wearables are doing that now too. A lot of people have an Apple Watch and you can switch things on and they do give reminders.
Right. But even if you don't have that, it can be as simple as putting a recurring alarm on your phone just to remind you to get up every 45 minutes or, maybe every 50 minutes and then go for a little walk, stretch your legs for 10 minutes, do the app, to open up the Optimal Me and do a little bit of stretching there and then get back to work.
And I think, and I don't think we necessarily need to talk about it, but our 21-day program is really all about that, learning to stack habits, building it into your day. Even if you don't have 15 minutes, do 5, so we have really tried to embed that. I think, look, the one thing, and maybe you can make a point about in this, is this whole issue around prevention. And you know what, you can take a horse to water with, but you can't make it drink. I think that is and I mean, we just instinctively, I think, kick the can down the road. You know, we've got so much else to deal with that if you don't have a problem right now, you shift that out and you only deal with it when you do. And, you know, maybe what might be interesting is some of in terms of addressing your followers directly and, you know, about being fit for travel, being, you know, doing stuff to really keep them.
Yeah, to keep them, to keep them motivated. But, you know, the one thing that I was curious about that I actually forgot to ask was, do you think, like in your experience and you're talking to people out there about their health and you're getting feedback from people, do you think that more people are concerned, like in a good way, about their health right now because of COVID than they ever have been? Like, I'm just wondering, are people saying like, oh crap, I need to get myself in better physical and mental health so that I'm less susceptible to getting this? Or I'm wondering if people are saying like, I'm throwing my hands up, this is going to get me or it's not going to get me. I think a lot of people are going through depression, you know, so I'm not going to take care of myself, like whatever I can do to take care of myself. And if that means I'm eating a container of ice cream, then I'm going to allow myself to do that. But do you get a sense either way of how people are responding right now in terms of their health?
I think at the start of all of this, the kind of life change that happened to people with lockdown was, we must take care of ourselves. We're going to stay fit. We're going to move more. We're going to eat more healthily. We really need to take care of our mental health. We're going to create appointments with our friends where we can check in and, you know, it's exciting. We can do Zoom or WhatsApp group calls. I think that as this has gone on, for me, what I see a lot is that people are in this sort of slump. They've gone from the high of being in a space where this is going to run for a limited time. We know, you know, if we get through 3 months, then this is going to be over. And I think as we all understand that this is going to require us to be in a different way of life for a much longer period than we expected, a lot of people have gone, oh, well, you know, this is going to be too long. I don't want to keep at that. Or as they've gotten a little bit depressed, don't have the energy or the mojo to do it. And, you know, it's a vicious circle. Because when you don't move and you don't eat well, you just amplify depression. You know, those things become far bigger in your world. And I'm sure that you know people who suffer truly with depression. I know people who do. It's not as simple as just, oh, come on, you know, pick yourself up. If you are suffering from a real chemical depression, you can't do that. And you really need to get help. I mean, people that are suffering from massively increased anxiety. And I think it's a very difficult time. I mean, again, and I keep throwing out sort of stats from a lot of the reading I'm doing and talking, is that women over 50 are the worst hit in terms of losing their jobs and not being that they're going to be the worst prepared financially for retirement than any other age group. And that is a terrifying thing. So there's so many reasons out there to be feeling sad and miserable or just really down and difficult. And I think levels of not only depression, but also anxiety are very high because people don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we do know that there is going to be, you know, economic pain for some time because we just don't know how things are going to rebound. We don't know how many businesses are going to manage to reopen. So, I mean, I think people that are really battling need to also know that they should reach out for help. If they know it's just, oh, today I just don't feel like getting out of bed and I'm going to have the tub of ice cream. If that becomes a real pattern, I think people should not wait before they look for assistance and help. But I think it's human nature to kind of take your foot off the pedal when, oh, well, I can't do this now. It's going to be another long time and I'm tired of it. I mean, I think that having to homeschool children must be beyond difficult. I think the only thing that I can really say is that there's only one thing that we can really do right now, and that is take care of ourselves. That's the only thing we actually have control over, is making sure that we are taking care of ourselves. And you don't have to have a lot of money or a lot of resource. I mean, even if you can't afford our app or somebody else's app or whatever, you can go and do your gardening or clean your house or do things you don't normally do, not be eating processed foods, cutting down on sugar, to just try and mitigate some of those things. I mean, I just know that there is no quick fix to the space that we're in right now. So we've got to, each one of us, find a way to be inspired, whether it's finding great podcasts or great books or
a community. Yeah, finding a community.
We've got to do that.
Thank you for saying that. Like, this is a great place to end it, because I think it's such a beautiful way to look at it, is that you said the one thing that we can control is our health. Like, we have control over what we're doing with our body, what we're putting in our body, where everything else, I mean, that is the frustrating thing, is that it feels like everything is out of our control. And no matter what decision we make, whether it's, I want to go to South Africa in December, somebody else has other plans for me. It is out of my control, but we can control our thoughts too, but we can also control our body and how we're responding to it. And I think that's a really important thing there. Hey, I'd like to end these conversations with the last question to the guest of, what does it mean to you to be bold?
Well, I love bold. I think that I've always thought bold was the way to go, even when I really shouldn't have been bold, when I had no qualification to be bold, when I had nothing to make me kind of stand up and say, I want to do this. I want to have a crack at this. Nothing's going to stop me if I believe in something. And I think often we don't get to be bold because somebody says to us, oh, who do you think you are to want to do that? Or you don't have the skills, or you're not something enough. And you know what? For women specifically, I don't know if there are any men that listen to your podcast, and I'm sure there are a few, and I hope they don't take offense. But if we think about the countries that are doing well right now in this time of COVID, they are run by women. And as women, we don't need to have anyone tell us anymore that we're not clever enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not young enough, old enough, smart enough, thin enough, fat enough, any enough. There's enough proof out there and enough people out there for us to be inspired by and to, stand our ground and believe in ourselves. And I think that being bold is deciding to go to Morocco. Being bold is deciding that tomorrow you're actually going to start an exercise program. Being bold is making decisions for yourself that actually make your life better. It doesn't all have to be massive. Being bold is telling your naughty child that you're not going to tolerate their nonsense anymore when you've sucked it up for however many years. I think for me, bold is not one size fits all, but bold is taking a brave step. And for some people, brave is jumping out of a plane. For other people, brave is going out of their front door. And I think that is what bold means to me, is, we can do amazing, extraordinary things if we just put one step, take one step today and tomorrow another one. I think that's bold.
I think that is the best answer I've ever had, and I'm 140 episodes in or something like that. That was amazing. Wow, thank you for that. That was a good one.
Oh, good.
That got me motivated. What am I doing sitting on my butt? I need to go do something. Off I go. Exactly. Oh, gosh. Liz, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you and your app? Are you on social media and the website, all that good stuff?
So our app is www.theoptimal.me, and that's where they'll find the app. I also have a blog that's called Over 50, Not the Hill, where each week I ramble on, as I do, about something that I find relevant or happy, or something to do with health or movement, or how we can all be over 50 but not over the hill. And for now, that's where they find me. I'm not very good on Instagram. The Optimal Me has a great Instagram page. I like to post when I travel, and I haven't been doing much of that. So my personal Instagram's not that exciting, because I'm not seeing the things that I like to see and share. So that's where they'll find us. And everyone is welcome, no matter what size, what age, or what state of fitness they're in. There's something for everybody that is hopefully useful and wise and will help them stay healthy and independent.
Well, thanks so much for your time. I can see just by the changing of the light since we've been on the call that it's nighttime there. The sun's gone down and it's getting darker. So, so thanks so much for being with me today. I'm so delighted to have this chat with you, Lady Grantham.
Yes. As I said, I hopefully shall be Lady Grantham when I get older.
Yes.
She's who I wish to be when I grow up.
Hopefully you were exercising while listening to that, or at the very least, it's inspired you to do so now. You can find all episodes of the She's Bold podcast, as well as links to all the things we talked about at shesboldpodcast.com/episodes, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Next week on the She's Bold podcast, I have Stacia Honnold. Now, Stacy is Alex Honnold's sister, the free solo guy, and she's also Deirdre Walnick's daughter. And you might recall that I've had Deirdre on the podcast a couple of times on episode number 127 about journaling during a pandemic. And she was also on episode number 83 when we talked about her own climbing experiences later in life. So just a heads up, Stacia is quite the adventurer herself. The whole family is. To keep up with me, you can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at both BethWhitWa and Wandergal. It's BETHWHITWA, and also Wandergal, WANDERGAL. Honestly, I'm not always great about keeping up with Instagram, but I am trying to get better at that, so you may see more fun posts on it. Feel free to leave a message or question at 877-280-5170. I really appreciate feedback. You can email me at beth@shesboldpodcast.com and let me know if you have suggestions for future guests or topics, or if there's anyone you'd like me to bring back to the show. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold group for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.